expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Jan Crawford. 5 weeks from Election Day, CBS News and the New York Times are out with a new poll tonight from battleground states. As he does every Tuesday, New York Times chief political correspondent Jeff Zeleny is joining us with details on that. Also, our awesome Bob Schieffer is here with his always expert and insightful analysis. And plus, again, it's Tuesday, so we've got Politico's Kiki back with our weekly series, Plugged In. So all of that and more. But first, we've got news that broke late last night that White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel could announce as early as this weekend that he's going to run for mayor of the city of Chicago, the great windy city. That's an office he's called his dream job for years. And Democratic National Committee Chair Tim Kain weighed in on this earlier today. Let's take a listen to that.
You know, I'm going to let Rahm Emanuel make the decision and make the announcement when he wants to, but if he goes ahead and makes a decision to run for the mayorship of Chicago, I think people will understand it's a very important position, and it's one that he's certainly thought about for a long time. And given the timing of that spot being up, candidates who want to run for mayor are going to have to declare fairly soon. So I don't expect that that's going to have any impact on the November elections. Rahm will make his decision as he makes it. Then the White House will, move forward with other folks in place to make sure that the work of the country is being done. But we've got very significant strategy laid out between now and the midterms in terms of our effort to reach out to voters and get them to turn out. And that's not going to change based on any announcement from the Chief of Staff's office.
Let's turn now to our roundtable. We've got Jeff up in New York. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. You've known Rahm Emanuel at least a decade, back to your days in Chicago. Have you talked to him about the idea of being mayor of that great city?
I have, Jan, and his eyes sort of light up when he talks about the prospect of being mayor of Chicago. He loves the city. He's from the north side of the city, and all points lean toward him running. He said he's not quite decided yet. He needs to sort of deal with some family issues. His kids, after all, moved to Washington, or in school there, but it looks like he will move back to Chicago and run. So it's interesting. He has a tough race there. He is by no means an automatic a winner. It's a free-for-all in some respects because the job of Chicago mayor does not come open very often. But in Washington, the reason it's a bigger story is just what a big impact this will have on the White House. A Rahm Emanuel free White House will be a very different place.
And how would you expect that to be different? I mean, obviously his personality is pretty forceful. What has his stamp been on inside that White House, and how will it change?
His stamp has been on trying to do as many things possible in the early part of the administration. He could see what was coming. He knew that this was likely to be a Republican year in these midterm elections. So they tried to really cram a lot of legislation in. Some people would say they tried to do too much, but his connection with the Hill and his close association with Speaker Pelosi and other Democrats in Congress really helped pave the way for some of these legislative initiatives to be enacted. So without Rahm Emanuel in the White House, it will be a different place just in terms of structure. But Washington will be a different place if Republicans happen to win a majority in the House and expand their presence in the Senate. So the timing is pretty good in terms of a change of strategy, change of personnel here at almost halftime of this administration.
All right, well, let me ask Bob, what's your sense of how effective Rahm Emanuel's been as a chief of staff?
Well, he's been pretty good on some things, and, there are some people who say that the Obama administration's congressional relations have not been very good. Some of the Democrats on Capitol Hill will tell you that they felt left out some of the time. And the
and
Republicans,
because of Rahm, maybe.
Because of Rahm or not because of Rahm. I'm just telling you what some of them say. And Republicans say they have been totally shut out. Now, the White House will tell you that they can't get the Republicans to do anything. Talk to Republicans like John Boehner, who will tell you he's never had a private conversation with Rahm Emanuel. So I think it'll be, it's a mixed reaction. But I think most people would give Rahm Emanuel pretty good marks. I mean, he's the closest thing really to a prime minister that we've had. I mean, this is not Cardinal Wolsey for Henry VIII, who was running the place and doing what he wanted to do, but it was someone who was carrying out the president's wishes and ran a pretty tight ship.
Well, obviously, you can have a number of different approaches to this job. I mean, how would you put him when you were looking and thinking about past chiefs of staff in previous administrations?
Well, the thing to remember,
obviously, some probably must be better than others.
Absolutely. I mean, look back to the Reagan administration if you want to know the difference in what a difference a chief of staff can make. Jim Baker, Ronald Reagan's first chief of staff, they passed the largest tax cut in history and the largest defense buildup in history. And then you get into the second term, Don Regan, who didn't know very much about the Hill. You basically saw lesser people in the White House taking over, and the president himself was not aware of what was going on. The president winds up getting himself involved in Iran-Contra. Chiefs of staff make an enormous difference in any White House, Republican or Democrat.
And thinking about that, Jeff, if I could go back to you, what do you think? And I don't want to have Rahm Emanuel, back in the 312 area code before he's ready to go. But it sounds like he's going. So who would his successor be? I mean, who would you expect? What names are you hearing to take his place?
Jan, there's a couple different ways that the president could go about it. He's likely to do a short-term replacement, someone sort of immediately, to fill the gap here. And that's likely to be, or possibly would be, another senior advisor, someone who is already in the White House, probably a man by the name of Pete Rouse. And Pete Rouse had the nickname of being the 101st senator. He had that nickname because he worked for a long time for Senator Tom Daschle, who, of course, is the former Democratic leader in the Senate. But he has worked for Mr. Obama since day one. He was the chief of staff to then young Senator Obama. So he is on the short list to become a perhaps interim chief of staff. But then longer term, I'm told that he does not want the job longer term. Longer term, the president will, I think, see exactly where he's at after the midterm elections and choose between someone who's already inside, or perhaps bring in sort of a wise sage from the outside to give some new blood and some fresh perspective. So I think he'll take a little bit of time making this decision because, as Bob just said, it's a very important one. It's the most important position in the White House, probably, other than the president.
I'm going to guess that he takes Tom Daschle.
Tom Daschle.
I think it's going to be Tom Daschle. I just want to go on the record right now.
So, Jeff, I mean, but Tom Daschle will be really different. I don't think he's quite as profane as Rahm Emanuel either.
He's not quite as profane, but a cooler temperature may be exactly what that building needs come November 3rd.
All right, well, speaking of November 3rd, let's move on to the upcoming midterms elections. Of course, we also talked to Kain about that this morning. Let's take a look at that clip.
I feel that we're going to hold on to both houses. It's a challenging time, and we've got a lot more work to do. I'm glad the elections are 5 weeks out rather than tomorrow. But we've seen some polling even in the recent couple of weeks that have been better and better for us in terms of the generic congressional polling, and in a number of key races. We have some good data of races moving our way. We got more work to do, and we can't rest or relax until November 3. But I feel like things are moving in the right direction right now. A midterm election is not the same as a presidential election. So, but every sign that I was getting from folks on the ground in Madison yesterday was that the rally's going to be great. It's going to be outdoors in a beautiful setting. And it's going to be his effort to, again, start to really clearly define the choice for voters this November and talk specifically to college students about the fact that the administration has really paid attention to their issues. Student loans, health care for young people, credit card reform. Students turned out in record numbers, and we haven't forgotten about their issues. We've addressed them.
All right, well, Jeff, I assume you heard some of that clip. Midterm elections 5 weeks out. Democrats, according to Kain, are feeling better, but there's some new polling that you've been looking at that I guess will be in the Times tomorrow. It's embargoed till tonight. What can you tell us about that, and what's that saying about kind of where voters are right now?
Well, Jen, we took a look at the mood of voters and sort of the playing field, which this election is playing out in the battleground state of Ohio. There's an interesting governor's race there, a Senate race, several interesting House races that really could tip the balance of control of Congress. So, and what we found is that voters in Ohio say they're actually more angry than voters across the country. Perhaps not surprisingly, because jobs and the economy are even more important issues to voters in Ohio, according to this latest poll. And other voters across the country. Jobs specifically has been the top concern, which is why Governor Ted Strickland, a Democrat, is really fighting for his reelection, like a lot of Democratic governors. So but what the poll finds, though, is that all is not lost for Democrats here. There are still some signs that Republicans Republican voters may be more enthusiastic, but are not entirely thrilled with their slate of candidates either. So it leaves things open a little bit, but voter anger is one of the chief findings of this poll.
Well, Bob, let me turn to you on this, because I mean, what can Obama, what do you think the president should be doing now as the midterms are around the corner? Is there more that he could be doing to try to galvanize
I'll tell you
people?
what he is doing. He is trying to get young people, and he is trying to get African American voters out. Those were the people who made a big part of the difference for Barack Obama in 2008. Traditionally in midterms, you don't get a very big turnout of young people. African Americans generally don't turn out, and so he has a new interview out in Rolling Stone magazine, and it is basically devoted
just out
today, devoted to telling people in his own party they've got to get off the stick. One of the quotes, "It is inexcusable for any Democrat to stand on the sidelines in this election. Change is hard. If you're serious, now is exactly the time. You have to step up." He says in the interview, "We have to get our folks off the sidelines. People need to shake off this lethargy that they're all feeling."
Uh-oh, that's not a malaise, is it?
He is talking about people in his own party.
But how can he? I mean, is this going to work? I mean, it's a midterm election, as Jeff and I mean, people are angry, but is this?
I don't know.
Could it?
But obviously that is where they're going to put the emphasis. He says in this interview, it's quite an interesting interview, and you talk about the speech Jimmy Carter made. He never used the word malaise in that interview, but everybody called it the malaise speech when he talked about lethargy and so forth. Barack Obama in this interview in Rolling Stone is talking about Democrats sometimes tend to see the glass as half empty, when in fact he says it is half full. We have accomplished a lot, but he says we've got a lot more we've got to do, but we're not going to get it done unless you get up and decide to take part in this election. I don't know if it'll work or not, but that's clearly where they're aiming right now.
Jeff, have you seen President Obama kind of going really on the offensive and trying to galvanize? I know you've done some reporting and writing on this, galvanize that vote, kind of the young vote, trying to get enthusiasm up to the level that it looks like Republicans are at right now.
There's no question about it, and Bob is absolutely right. I mean, the reason that the president and even the vice president who encouraged the left to stop whining, the reason that they're going after these base Democrats so much is because independent voters are not with them in this midterm election. They know that, and they know that there's nothing or very little they can do over the next 5 weeks. So they're trying to get a lot of those first-time voters who, supported President Obama, who embraced his message of hope and change. He's trying to make them feel, a little bit, sort of put a guilt trip on them, if you will, for not coming out. We'll see if it works. I'm with Bob. I'm not sure that it will, but it's one of their sort of last strategies here on the that they can try. So that's what they're doing.
All right. Well, we're going to have to end it there, Jeff. Thanks a lot. We'll look forward to reading your piece with more on the poll. But I have to say, Bob, and thank you too, I have to say maybe Ohioans are so angry because they're ranked number 2, not number 1, like the Alabama Crimson Tide.
They were almost ranked number 1 this week.
Did you factor that into your questions? Anyway, thanks, Jeff, and we will see you next week. And thank you, Bob. And now we're going to end today's show with our weekly series, Plugged In, with Politico's Kiki Ryan for the lighter side of the headlines in Washington. So, Kiki, let's kick things off, of course, with we got to go back to Sarah Palin.
Okay. Well,
Tell us what you know.
Sarah Palin is appearing now on 2 new covers of the Archie comic books, the classic comic book, alongside President Obama. One of them features them both in superhero costumes flying through the air, about to crash midair. The other has them sort of both in like a boxing rink and the thriller from Wazilla versus the kid from Chicago. And so, yeah, they're going to appear in 2 comic books. There's one that came out earlier that featured them all, having a milkshake together at the high school and being friends. But now it seems like these 2 outcoming ones are them fighting against each other.
But it does have the kind of that retro, you kind of like that
cool.
retro. Yeah, look at the Superman.
Yeah, why not?
So what impact will this have, though? I mean, what's just something fun? I mean, do you think it's getting buzz out there?
It's just something fun. I mean, when they came out with the one that sort of had them as friends, it got so much attention that Archie was like, well, let's just keep going on this.
They got a gold mine.
Yeah, they did. So they came out with 2 more. Why not? And Sarah Palin last night, too, was back in the news because she made an appearance on Dancing with the Stars. So,
Wait, but she was not dancing.
she was not dancing. She
Bristol's
was there
dancing.
to support her daughter Bristol, and they showed her Bristol and her dancing partner went up to Alaska and sort of taught her some moves. And she was down there in Hollywood last night, cheering her on. And there was a funny scene because there was some booing in the crowd, and you weren't sure if it was because they were booing at Sarah Palin being there, or if it was the scores of the previous dancer Jennifer Grey. People thought in the audience maybe they thought her scores should have been higher, or if it was because of Sarah Palin. So people were like, was Sarah Palin booed last night? We don't know, but she was there.
Well, she probably, I'm guessing, where's this show tape? LA?
It's in LA, yeah, it's in Hollywood.
I'm guessing that she probably doesn't have a huge fan base there.
I don't think
Has she done any polling there lately?
I don't know. Yeah, they tend to be a little bit more of a liberal area down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but let me ask you one more question about the comic books, though. Are comic books, I mean, that kind of thing, obviously, it's like a cultural, kind of penetrates, and the two figures they've picked are kind of, I mean, are they a way also of breaking through that so that Palin, she may find that this is something that, I don't know, works for her? I mean, they've got her there looking like a superhero. I mean, he's the leader of the free world. I mean, I get that.
Well, I think it's interesting that they picked Palin to sort of be the GOP, his counterpart in it. That says something that they believe that she's sort of the forerunner for the Republican Party right now to put her up on the comic book. I mean, I don't really know how many people still really read comic books, but I think just that having her in this persona going against Obama is a big symbol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I now feel like I need to go and buy it.
Yeah, sure. It'll probably be a collector's item. Why not?
Well, thanks so much, Kiki, for
Sure.
joining us, and we will see you next Tuesday.
All right.
And that is it today for Washington Unplugged. You can join us here every day on CBSNews.com and join me every Tuesday with Jeff and Kiki, and when we're really lucky, Bob. I'm Jan Crawford. Have a great day.